Thanks to Smilegate stating they'll be rewriting the story for Chaos New Nightmare, no one is really talking about it. In the most recent roadmap stream, they stated they will be releasing the rewrite in April, while remaining tight-lipped on the details. This doesn't help with getting people hyped up. We have no idea whether the story we're in now is worth caring about. I understand the situation Smilegate is in means they're forced to take a loss no matter what. They either do not release story content and nerf their marketing strategy, or they release story content and have no one talking about it because why bother if you already admit your story is trash? And then there's me, who is just enjoying it for what it's worth. Since there is literally, and I mean literally, no one talking about the story, and that's pretty much a thing in this channel, I might as well do it myself. To those new to the channel, this will be a summary of the first story event in Chaos New Nightmare. These tend to be detail summaries, though I will be leaving things out for what I deem to be irrelevant. That's why it's a summary and not a retelling. To those who are familiar with my work from Girls Frontline, don't worry, I am still working on those videos. I don't want anyone thinking I'm abandoning that. I'm just expanding my horizons. If you haven't seen Chaos New Nightmare's story or are just turned off by the gameplay, think of this as a viewpoint as to why I think this story has a lot of potential. So I think it's worth talking about. That said, things will be slightly different from that series. This structure will be separated into two parts. The first part will be the actual summary, and the second part will feature my personal review where I get a lot more opinionated. It'll pretty much work like in my previous video where I made a scathing review of the first 5 chapters, just more organized. This will probably be a series, depending on how this video goes. We'll see. Anyway, let's get started with the event, Forbidden Catalyst. Before I proceed into the event itself, I do want to add a lot of context to the scene right before this, which is the epilogue where the captain relives a memory. It is important to the overarching narrative, and I'm very sure this will remain relevant after the rewrite. This scene is jammed-packed with details. For the sake of time, I'll try to be brief as possible. When the captain is first taken into this memory, he immediately makes note that this memory doesn't feel like a memory. It's more like a new experience. He specifically states he felt he was in an actual present reality. First is a glimpse of the captain's ability. At a glance, it just looks like they're showcasing he can rewind time, but it is much, much more than that. In this memory, we see Ray, Owen, and Renoa die to Luskus, the first major boss that is encountered in the introduction. These deaths were fast and merciless. Upon this major loss, the captain rewinds time, warns his team of attacks ahead of time, and adjusts his strategy. He continues his cycle, witnessing his team die over and over again, until they eventually scrape out a win with no casualties. Right off the bat, there is a lot more going on than just rewinding time. First, this scene is just entirely different from the introduction. Mika is not present, no one appears to have life cores, and most glaringly, we as the captain were actually able to win against Luskus because we were not immediately injured like how we were in the introduction. And what actually gets us away the most is the captain's inner monologue. The captain states, "An unfamiliar conversation, Ray's death, a relentless headache. This isn't a memory, but another present derived from the past." And he also states, "Confronting the origin before ending in despair feels strangely unfamiliar." The final hint is, even though the captain established this is not a memory, he still somehow knows the monster's name, Luskus, even though the captain of this reality did not have this information yet. Next, we have the major reveal of this scene. When the squad killed Luskus, Ray, Owen, and Renoa were immediately and savagely killed afterward by Lewis. By the time the captain realized what had happened, all he could see is Ray and Owen in pieces, and Renoa's corpse with a massive hole in her stomach, telling the captain to run before she goes lifeless. Needless to say, Lewis is extremely powerful, and as stated in Chapter 1, he even has the ability to navigate through the chaos without a Protoss. But in the main story that we are from, he was never this hostile. When the captain, who is enraged, asks Lewis why he killed his team, Lewis simply stated he wanted to see how the captain would react to such a scene. The captain did not accept this answer. Thus, Lewis provided him with a hint to his true intentions. If memory is just a form of data, there also can be meaningless dummy data. If your head were crammed full of this utterly useless garbage data, what would you do? Wouldn't you feel the urge to clean it out? I spent a long time deciphering this hint, and I think I got it. It might just be the final piece to this puzzle to make this entire scene make sense. Immediately, I can say with confidence that we are deep in the parallel world theory. The captain is not reversing time per se. He is instead abandoning a timeline and moving himself to a body that exists in another timeline. The best way I can think of to explain it without heavily relying on a reference is to use an analogy. Since Lewis used data as an example, let's say the captain is a video game player. He plays a game with a maximum of 30 save files. On his first playthrough, he gets stuck on a boss, and he can't get past it after many retries. At this point, he decides to run a new save file and do things much more differently so he can prepare for the boss. Now, to better prepare for things to come, he utilizes all of his save files and do multiple playthroughs to learn the game inside and out. This is basically the captain's power on as large of a scale it can possibly be. He can learn as much as he can by sending his data to different parallel worlds. But there are limitations, which is what Lewis mentioned. To stay on the analogy, there are only 30 save files. So even though Captain can play the game an infinite amount of times, he can only have 30 save files worth of memories. So in order to save any new information past this point, he would have to delete any save files that he could live without. To speak plainly, these save files are the parallel worlds, and these worlds have their own version of the captain living their lives, with the same goal to destroy the chaos. Since there are an infinite amount of parallel worlds, the captain can jump to any point he needs to, granted he exists and is alive in that parallel world. This actually fixes an issue I voiced about in my previous video. This resolves the plot point about the captain losing his memories at the beginning of the game. This is because the captain had to go to another save file that had different decisions made compared to the one he was just in. And during that jump, he had to get rid of other save files that no longer mattered, or the redundant data, as Lewis puts it. It also explains the intense headaches that the captain occasionally gets, as he is getting an explosion of memories slamming into his mind at seemingly random points in time. The opening lines from the introductory cutscene when the captain first wakes up seems to support this. It states, "A violent storm of memories surged through your mind, burning everything in its path. From the depths of your muddled memories, the last thing you had said slipped from your lips before you even realized it." And this is a theory for now, but I think the captain may have forgotten that he has these abilities in the first place. If Lewis literally overwhelmed his mind trying to save Renoa and the others, then the captain using the last of his strength to do something drastic at the cost of himself would make sense. And it would allow the story to justify why the captain appears so muted at the beginning of the game. This also firmly puts the captain as an extremely important and frankly powerful protagonist, though it is very low-key right now. This also establishes Lewis as the primary antagonist, and he may potentially be the only one who knows of the captain's true abilities. Honestly, this whole scene could be a video in of itself, but we'll leave it at that. Getting to the actual event, we first start off with the captain still in the archives getting his data synchronized. This is immediately after his confrontation with Lewis in that alternate reality. While he is dazed, a memory resurfaces that actually happened in our current timeline, and we as a player are learning about it now. This is back on Haven, involving Azalante and Orlea. It's revealed that the reason why the captain was so interested in Orlea seeing his future is because he wants to know how the alternate SS Nightmare crashed back on the Blue Pod. If he could have his future unveiled ahead of time, he could prevent it. Thanks to the Nightmare crew's efforts, Orlea finally agreed to peer into his future. But when she did, for lack of a better phrasing, she completely and utterly had a mental breakdown. She ended up saying this prophecy: "As the death of the one who walks ahead casts a shadow, all fragments of divine power, the void, swallow the false creatures. Lying beyond, the sacrifice that cannot be understood, the offering that cannot be saved, approaches with the looming death. Before the pitiful one who walks ahead stands the care of the god." Orlea then loses her breath from the hyperventilation and passes out. After being sent to the infirmary, Azalante reports that Orlea will make a full recovery, but that event has never happened before, even when she saw Haven's destruction. While she was weighed down by having such knowledge, she never had a mental breakdown. Azalante could only assume what Orlea saw in the captain's future was beyond human comprehension. But since Orlea was out of commission, they couldn't ask her about it. Cutting their losses, the captain and Renoa returned to the SS Nightmare. Going back to the present, the data synchronization completes, and afterward, Captain and Renoa speaks with their director, Parthenia. After investigating Captain's memories, she took special interest in Orlea's breakdown, particularly focused on her prophecy. It reminded her a good deal about a recent report on the Ark, Terracion. Terracion is an Ark civilization independent from the Empire's control. In terms of human civilization, it is the closest thing to a utopia after the destruction of Earth, and it has powerful technology that is useful against the chaos. However, it does not possess the means to produce Protoss, which remains an Empire exclusive. So the two nations have a close working relationship. Terracion provides equipment, while the Empire provides Protoss. Yet the Protoss is extremely valuable to the Empire, so one dying under Terracion's jurisdiction would cause great concern, and that's exactly what happened. While the Nightmare crew was handling Judas, a Protoss died in the chaos under Terracion's watch. Orlea's prophecy, etched with death, reminded Parthenia of that, and she couldn't help but wonder if that could be a lead. It also made Parthenia curious that Terracion reported this death directly to her and asked for aid, which made her believe that they are fabricating a story to hide something deeper. This was enough to convince the captain to accept the investigation mission, to find out what happened to his fellow Protoss. When they return to the Nightmare, they get a call from Orlea. While she was a little annoyed that the captain left while she was passed out, Renoa pointed out that she was unconscious for several days. This only made Orlea admit that she wanted to sleep in longer, but she really needed to tell the captain something before he left. Orlea admitted that she saw an overwhelming amount of futures for the captain. So many, in fact, that she can't remember them all. But the one thing she knows with absolute certainty is the captain has the same burdens that she does, as he also can see what others cannot. So she encourages him to keep going and to not waver, as it was through him that she also found the courage to face the future. The captain wasn't quite sure how to respond to that, but Orlea simply asked him to take her words to heart, as she really meant them. After Orlea cut off contact, the Nightmare moved on and arrived at Terracion. The majority of the Nightmare agents decided to chill out in the city, as many of them grew up there. The captain and Renoa, though, immediately went to business. They met up with the Special Investigations Department, also known as SID. As the name implies, they are in charge of investigating special criminal activities. But more importantly, this is the department that the deceased Protoss was assigned to. From there, they met several characters. Wilhelmina, an old friend of Renoa's, she seemed to have a lot of those. Amir, an investigator of the SID. Adelheid, a little girl that the SID is taking care of. And Yuki, the chief of the SID. She is also the main focus of this event. Upon first meeting Yuki, she came off as brazen and testy towards the captain. This was bold enough that Renoa got annoyed by this. When she called this out, Yuki stated that she was just being honest with them and departed. When she left, Amir revealed that Yuki and the deceased Protoss were actually very close, so working with another Protoss has her on edge. The deceased Protoss was named Asuna. She was the primary lead for any chaos-related issues. So not only were Asuna and Yuki close, They were also highly synchronized in battle. During a mission, the chaos they were in began to become highly unstable, enough to force all agents in the area to retreat before they were killed. Sensing that the unstable chaos could have dire consequences if left alone, Asuna stayed behind in an attempt to quell the chaos. Unable to return to the chaos, Yuki and the rest of SID were forced to wait for any developments. But eventually, the chaos stabilized and then disappeared. When SID returned to the scene, they confirmed that the chaos core was completely gone, and so was Asuna. The captain and Renoa quickly came to the realization that this situation is very similar to the blood rituals that Judas and the Holy Crusaders did. But if a Protos is sacrificed instead of a normal human being, the ramifications behind that could be very dangerous. It could even threaten the entire universe. This is a situation that Terracion wants to keep quiet, and this is why they only announced Asuna's death, and nothing further. Amir then brings up one omitted detail. At the scene, they found one lone gemstone, and this gem had a certain aura about it. Yuki was 100% certain that the gem was in fact Asuna, so in a way, Asuna is not dead, but she lacks a body. The research team decided to call this gem Primonium, and began research in an attempt to utilize it. Yuki supervised this very closely, but at some point, their Primonium was stolen, and these thieves had taken the gem into the chaos for unknown reasons. Considering the situation and with how close they all are to Asuna, they want to save her, and they want the captain's help in doing so. Accepting this, they arrived in the chaos nearby Terracion. According to the SID, this is where they last tracked the thieves. Once inside the chaos, the search was on. This eventually led to them reaching a corpse of a monster and a portal called a dimensional tunnel, which was shaped like a human. Yuki warned the captain that the portal sucks in anyone that comes close, and she deducted that the thief cut down the monster and afterwards must have been sucked into the tunnel while they were trying to escape. As if proving this deduction, Amir managed to find a Primonium right next to the portal. When Amir got close, the portal reacted, but the Primonium glowed, and the dimensional tunnel disappeared. Yuki was 100% confident that Asuna protected Amir just now. While Renoa didn't quite buy into this theory yet, she concluded that the Primonium, which is the fusion of a Protos and chaos itself, did in fact have power beyond their imagination. Leaving the chaos, the team arrived at the SID Information Center to store the Primonium. From here, the captain and Renoa learns a bit more about Asuna. While there was no record of Asuna, the captain felt a connection to her upon seeing an image of her face. She was a bright and upright person who held back a lot of turmoil in her heart, just like himself. This duality was likely the reason why she and Yuki were so close. When Yuki was convinced that the captain understood Asuna's value, she mentioned the second half of Terracion's plan. The SS Nightmare is well known for a specialty for deciphering chaos entities, so they would ask the captain to analyze their Primonium, since their current equipment doesn't seem to be up for the job. The captain and Renoa agreed to this, and with that, Yuki was satisfied enough to entrust Asuna to them. But getting off that heavy subject, Yuki wanted to celebrate retrieving Asuna by going out drinking. While Renoa reminded the captain that he has a very busy schedule tomorrow, he was convinced by Yuki's enthusiasm to take a load off. During their outing, Yuki happily got drunk and flirtatious with the captain, which did nothing but deeply annoy Renoa. With the two of them fighting over the captain's attention, he found taking the night off to be chaotic but worth it. After some time, Yuki fell asleep at the table. Renoa voiced her doubts about Yuki's behavior, but the captain waved it off, stating he could feel that Yuki holds a lot of fear that Asuna may never be revived, so her bravado is an act to hide that. Renoa took this to heart and also began to wonder what Asuna was like. But while she was on this train of thought, she suddenly passed out. Before the captain could question this, he felt hands lashed onto him and he was carried off at breakneck speeds. Under a bridge, the captain regained himself. In front of him were two women, Itsuku and Chizuru. Itsuku, the one who captured the captain, admitted that she spiked all of their drinks. However, the captain never took a drink as both Yuki and Rinoa took his. Chizuru didn't mind this, as she noted that his combat ability is low. More importantly, she had no desire to kill him anyway, as that would cause more trouble than necessary. Instead, she was content with just stealing the Primonium again. But like clockwork, Yuki suddenly caught up with them. Turns out, after the first cup, she managed to realize their drinks were spiked. However, the drug was strong enough to make her sluggish. Regardless, the idea of Asuna being stolen again made Yuki go berserk. Yuki and Chizuru then engaged in battle. While Chizuru held back, Yuki did not. She was making cleaves strong enough to slice whole buildings in half. This made Chizuru realize she had to get deathly serious. The captain noticed something demonic coming from Chizuru, and he realized Yuki was seconds away from dying. In a bout of desperation, the captain jumped in the way of Chizuru's incoming attack. Then he blacked out. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in what could only be described as hell. He then heard what sounded like a demonic spirit, and it was taunting someone. The captain awoke sometime afterwards. Above him was a Yuki in tears, begging for him to not die like Asuna. Once the captain assured there was no scratch on him, she managed to calm down. By this time, Rinoa had also arrived, still in a sluggish state. She reported that the Primonium has once again been stolen. Now knowing the power of their assailants, they all followed their tracks. This leads them to a dimensional tunnel that was somehow in the middle of the city. With much caution, they decided to enter it. Once inside, it was immediately noted that there is no chaos in this realm. It was conjured up by something else. Within this tunnel, they ran into hollow figures filled with emotions and memories. The captain read these memories, which surprised Yuki, as Asuna never showed this ability. Rinoa clarified that the captain is special, and that ability is exclusive to him. At the end of the tunnel, they find a child who was sucked into the portal. After getting rid of the dimensional beast, the portal resurfaced and showed the way out. Taking the child, they escaped and got them to safety. As a result, they lost Chizuru and Itsuku. With that, they regrouped at the SS Justitia Defense Command Room. Within there, they met with Erica, a space traffic patrol cop. Now with both teams together, they laid out their operation. Erica tracked the Primonium's energy source, and it was taken to a nearby planet called Delta. This added credit to Yuki's working theory. Given the strength of the drug in their drinks, she made the hypothesis that Chizuru and Itsuku were backed by a company, and Delta is part of the Peltian territory. Peltian is a faction that is mainly controlled by the conglomerate of wealthy companies, and one of those companies is called Kaguya Pharmaceuticals, which just so happened to be on Delta. Now suspecting them of illegal activity, their objective would be to investigate this company and retrieve the Primonium. The team then went back to the Nightmare to proceed. However, on their way to Delta, they ran into an absolutely massive dimensional tunnel with large teeth called the Maw of the Void. The Maw hungrily drew in the vessel before everything went dark. A moment later, everything became clear. The Nightmare operator, Rowan, stated everything was operational. Turns out the Nightmare vessel was saved by the Empire. More particularly, the Empire vessel, the Rigel, belonging to the Supreme Executive, Sir Vitor. He caught their distress signal and used a gravity anchor to pull back the Nightmare from being sucked in. After saving them, he warned them that the Nightmare was highly prestigious to Arcananon, and any failure will reflect badly on the Empire. The captain clarified their position, stating they are going to Delta to investigate Kaguya Pharmaceuticals. The Empire found this acceptable and led them to their devices. Rinoa expressed concern afterwards, stating the Supreme Executive is ruthless. Should they fail this mission, and the Empire catches wind of this, they might even wipe Delta off the map if it meant ensuring all threats are extinguished. Quickly setting up their plan, the Nightmare crew visited a company that partnered with Kaguya Pharmaceuticals called Company 110. This is a mining company with enough manpower to mine up entire planets, and Kaguya Pharmaceuticals uses them as a raw supplier. This company is led by a man named Cassius. After getting to know them, Cassius informed the Nightmare crew that Delta, at this point, is a wasteland and has been completely exhausted. Furthermore, the chaos has appeared, and along with that, dimensional tunnels have appeared along with it. For all intents and purposes, no company should be willing to stick around, yet Kaguya Pharmaceuticals is. Seeing a business opportunity, Cassius offers to show them a secret route to Kaguya Pharmaceuticals in order to help the Nightmare crew. Once they arrived, they were on their own. Yuki took the lead, though Rinoa was openly agitated by her constant bravado. Yuki mentioned that while Rinoa was drugged, she's the one who saved the captain, and this was enough for the both of them to start squaring up. As the captain was calming them down, the team detected Itsuku wandering nearby. Itsuku quickly ran away, with the team giving chase. Itsuku eventually became exhausted from running though, and Yuki caught up easily, giving her 3 seconds to return Asuna or she'll cleave her in two. Quickly after this, a mutated monster appeared, forcing the party to focus on it. But while they did so, not only did Itsuku retreat, but the captain was also captured by Chizuru. It turns out, Itsuku was the bait, just so Chizuru could get to him. Ever since their first meeting, Chizuru noticed something very unique about him. He was able to notice the demon inside her. Chizuru formally introduced herself. She is a shaman maiden of Umishiro, a successor to the Gesue Ken and the living seal of Kurokage. She was currently acting as a mercenary of Kaguya Pharmaceuticals as a means to an end. Chizuru then informed the captain that until today, no one except herself has been able to see Kurokage, not even another Protoss. To her surprise, not only can the captain see the demon, but he can also comprehend and communicate with it within his own realm. Somehow, the captain is able to peer inside her soul and gaze into her seal. Which begs the question, how? The captain was unsure of how to process this large amount of information, so Chizuru decided to take a different approach. She realized physical contact was necessary for him to access the seal, so she completely dropped her hostility and asked him to hold her. He decided to oblige. Once firmly attached, he gets pulled into a familiar dark realm. In the sky, he could see a dark void, and this demon also peered back at Chizuru. With the context now staring at them, Chizuru explained once again that she is a shaman, the strongest of her clan. She was well known for exorcising all forms of demons, all except for Kurokage. Residing on the moon, it was gaining the power to destroy worlds. Unable to destroy it, Chizuru was forced to use her own body as a seal in order to save her own world. However, she was unable to keep it sealed on her own, its power too overwhelming. So she managed to partner with Kaguya Pharmaceuticals, who mechanically enhanced the seal by bounding her body. With her live arms fully restrained, the company built mechanical arms as a replacement. With her help, Kurokage was effectively sealed. Since the mechanical arms require maintenance, she and Kaguya Pharmaceuticals agreed to a professional relationship. She would act as their mercenary, while the company would keep her arms and restraint in top shape. With all of that information provided, they stopped gazing within the seal. Back in reality, Chizuru stated with confidence that he is necessary to destroying Kurokage once and for all, so she is willing to betray her company should he agree to help her. Though, if he refuses, she will kill him for the sake of her mission. To emphasize, she put her sword to his neck. While this ended up not being much of a choice, the captain thought about this rationally. It was very likely that Kurokage isn't a demon, but rather a manifestation of chaos. With his mission to eradicate all of chaos, he had no reason to refuse Chizuru whatsoever. The actual problem at hand is he had no idea how to kill Kurokage. There's not enough information on it, or what chaos core it manifested from. So the captain worked out a deal to just work together instead. She gives the Fermonium back and help him rid of the chaos in this area. In turn, he will use his resources to study Kurokage. Chizuru easily agreed to this. However, she kept the Fermonium in her possession, given it is the most valuable asset in this mission. It is her greatest leverage. The captain agreed to this arrangement. After dealing with an encounter, the Nightmare crew and Yuki chased down Izuku, who was begging for her mistress to save her. Now back together, the crew was surprised to see Chizuru and the captain standing together. After a short explanation, Chizuru led the group to Laboratory Number 2, where her handler would be. Along the way, the captain would notice Chizuru's killing intent would get much softer when she is close to him. Noticing his curiosity, Chizuru admitted that no one peered into her soul before, so she feels vulnerable, but also comfortable around him. It also helped that she was looking forward to spending more time with him in efforts to destroy Kurakage. Yuki and Renault clearly did not enjoy Chizuru's sudden affection for the captain. But once everything was back on track, Chizuru explained that the reason why she stole the Primonium was it was cited to be the only thing strong enough to destroy the source of the dimensional tunnels. As for what that cause is, Chizuru was not able to explain that just yet. Yuki understood what was going on. This was an experiment gone wrong. Kage Pharmaceuticals tried to cover it up, and went as far as to steal official sources under Teresian to do it. Company 110, who was in collaboration with Kaguya, felt things were going too far, so they actively aided the Nightmare crew to distance themselves from the situation. Chizuru admitted that her deduction was accurate, and as much as she would want to say she didn't care, this is the company that maintained her arms. She would hope they would be able to renegotiate the mission. In order to do this, they would have to speak with Director Blanche, but she would be difficult to reason with. Chizuru knew of a way around this though. The director is obsessed with research, especially when it comes to blood. Chizuru already knew that even among Protoss, the captain is special. So providing a blood sample of the captain would be enough to sway the director. While the captain was unsure of this, he decided to comply. Eventually, they reached Lab 2, where they would meet Director Blanche. The first impression one would think of from Blanche is that she is shrewd but eccentric. She was completely unwilling to cooperate, but once Chizuru provided the blood sample, her attitude completely changed. She was able to tell the blood was special just by smelling it. Honestly, it looked like she went into heat. Holding back her excitement, she inspected the captain, who was really confused by her reaction. She told him that he is indeed a one-of-a-kind Protoss. Even Asuna, who turned into the Primonium, is not unique. Any Protoss would have gone through that same reaction. The captain, on the other hand, has something special in his body that no other Protoss has. And she, very badly, wants to experiment on him. The captain agreed to this, which is not what Blanche expected at all. She warned him that he had no idea what she would do to him. But the captain affirmed that he is willing to go through any pain if it meant helping the ones he cares for. Blanche began to understand why Chizuru became so attached so quickly, and led the group deeper into the lab. Before she revealed their secrets, she made the captain promise to hold up his end of the deal, which she had no issues agreeing to. Thus, she agreed to show them what was truly going on at Kaguya Pharmaceuticals. Once they entered the deepest part of the lab, the group saw something that shook them to their cores. The captain describes it as this: samples of Protoss data pasted everywhere, ores used as catalysts, process solutions, fragments and pieces of monsters, and a life form that smells like a chaos storm from its blood scent, but impossible to tell if it's a monster or a mutant. They all look at us simultaneously. Blanche introduced this life form as a new type of Protoss called Replica. Blanche explained that as long as the Empire had a firm grip on Protoss, they will rule over everyone. Even Teresian, who had enjoyed independence, buckled easily to the Empire because they just cannot handle even the smallest chaos threat without a Protoss. Backed by multiple conglomerates and the Peltian faction, they all agreed that the Empire holding such a monopoly is not only unfair, but also highly dangerous for everyone else. So Kaguya Pharmaceuticals took it upon themselves to create their own version of a Protoss. Upon completion, they will mass produce it. During this explanation, the super large majority of the crew had to leave the area. Yuki, in particular, was so enraged that she committed to slicing Blanche's head off and would have easily done so if Chizuru had not blocked it. Yuki couldn't believe that Asuna was being used for something so cold and heartless. But with the captain's still sound of mind, he told her to take a step back and let him handle this. Yuki then left, stating she will kill them when she gets the chance. This left the captain, Rinoa, Chizuru, and Blanche remaining in the room. Rinoa herself was very on edge, as she had realized that once given the chance, the captain will be used for this experiment. But instead of focusing on that, she instead asked why their promoting was important to this plan. Blanche explained that their plan wasn't just to create something like a Protos, but rather something that surpassed it. Their plan was to fuse humans and monsters together, and with gene splicing to refine the life form, they could potentially create something that could not only have the abilities of a Protos, but also far exceed their combat capabilities. During these endeavors, they created a replica called HA-87, also known as Haku. Haku was easily their strongest replica. However, they lost control of him, and it began to rampage in laboratory number 0. The source of the dimensional tunnels is him, and if left unchecked, he will destroy the lab, and as a result, the Empire will know that replicas are being created. Their Promonium was stolen in an attempt to use something strong enough to kill Haku. That was its only purpose. Overall, Rinoa found this to be disgusting. But with the captain's commitment to satisfying the opposing party, there wasn't much else she could do. Before they could proceed forward though, the lab suddenly went into full alert, as chaos spread into the lab. The discarded replicas were mutated by the chaos into monsters, forcing everyone to fight. But this wasn't only in the lab, it was beginning to infest the facility itself. As things were beginning to look bleak, there was suddenly a flying object detected, incoming at high speeds. Looking at the monitor, Chizuru quickly realized what this was, as her orders told her to avoid this combatant at all costs, as she could easily destroy the facility and the planet itself if she really wanted to. This was Serenial, the chief of the Aerospace Defense Command in the Ark Protection Bureau, also known as the Guardian Angel. Through surveillance, they spot Serenial touching down on the planet Delta, and easily destroying hordes upon hordes of monsters, treating them as a warm-up. Once the dust was settled, Serenial met up with everyone and exchanged very familiar greetings with Yuki. Turns out, Yuki secretly recorded their conversation with Blanche and sent this information to the Ark Protection Bureau. As protocol states, if there is a real threat to Teresian, the Ark Protection Bureau must be deployed. Blanche, completely paralyzed by these sudden developments, leaves handling the new guests to Chizuru, while she retreated back. While preparations were being made, Serenial and the captain meet for the first time. Ironically, it was Serenial who was starstruck, as she had heard of the SS Nightmare, and the vessel's cannon that can completely obliterate any Chaos Core, which is something that could only be done through the captain's pinpoint analysis on the surface. Due to this, Serenial wondered if she could destroy a Chaos Core with the captain's help. While the captain believed that Nightmare's cannon is stronger, he was curious enough to cooperate with her in the future. With her is Peko, an engineer of the Ark Protection Bureau, and is Serenial's best friend. She also serves as a table for Serenial's massive chest. Anyway, once everything was in order, the group's next objective was to reach Laboratory Number 0, which would be where Haku resides. Along the way, Serenial enjoyed getting to know the Nightmare crew. Though Rinoa kept her distance, she really did not like all these new women swarming the captain. In order to get to Lab 0, they would have to cross through Lab 1. Along the way, Captain and the others investigated logs in the archives to learn more about Haku. But what they found instead was something just as surprising. There were 2 more surviving experiments. GA-01, known as Gaia, and NA-02, known as Narja. These 2 were first discovered by Serenial and Peko. As it turned out, Serenial was also an experiment in Kaguya Pharmaceuticals, though it was a matter to save her life from an infection from the chaos. The experiments performed on Serenial are what gave her overwhelming powers today. But during her stay, she remembered the closed-off sections of the lab, and also remembers the mission of creating replicas. So with that in mind, Serenial wondered if she should kill these 2 replicas. It was easily shown though that they have no willingness to fight, only to survive. This was enough for Serenial to vouch for them, and they were added to the party. This ended up working out for them, as the 2 replicas knew how to get to Haku. Along the way though, the captain stopped Narja, asking her if she was okay with them killing Haku, who was a fellow replicant. Narja hesitated to answer at first, and ultimately wasn't able to give a firm answer. All she could say was Haku was once a person full of hope, but he eventually lost control of his body to something more vile. She would like for him to come back, but unsure if that's possible. The captain comforted Narja, stroking her shoulders without fear. This helped ease the tension, and Narja moved on. Serenial, who overheard the conversation, was unsure if she made the right choice allowing the 2 replicants to live. They could possibly become corrupted by the chaos and go on a rampage. She wondered if the captain felt the same way about his decisions all the time, but she quickly took that back. Instead, she hoped the captain to be strong and perfect, so she could follow him. The captain immediately shut this down, stating no one is perfect. Instead, he stated they need to help each other as long as they live. Realizing where her worries are coming from, he revealed that Serenial's file was also in the archives, and he gave them a read. He understands she was an experiment here, and she sees little difference between herself and the replicants. He committed to always being there for her, and told her to rely on him for anything she needs. This gave a lot of comfort to Serenial, and it was this moment where she began to feel a strong connection to the captain. During this time, Chizuru and Yuki were finally able to become cordial. Yuki decided to trust Chizuru with Asuna, and Chizuru apologized for stealing Asuna in the first place. While neither enjoyed each other's company, they agreed to help each other on this mission. Now finally in full motion, the group fought through Laboratory Zero in an effort to get to Haku. Eventually, they all reached an elevator that led to the lowest floor on the lab. While no one could see Haku, they definitely felt his immense power. As they approached the elevator, the captain suddenly felt a wave of dizziness. This caught Renoa's attention, but the captain insisted he was fine. This caused Renoa to pipe down, but she urged him to ensure his life cord was operational, unlike before. Once reaching the bottom level, they entered into the lion's den. In front of them was the one named Haku. He is someone the captain never met before, but nonetheless, he recognized him easily. That's when the captain realized the dizziness he felt was Haku connecting to him on a telepathic level. He was waiting for him specifically. Regardless, Narja and Gaia tried to appeal to his humanity, but it was no use. The experiments forced him to become as powerful as they needed him to be, but once Haku reached that level, he was deemed too dangerous. This forced Haku to resist, and now he will use his power to return everything to the void, so he can have true freedom. Narja attempted once again, stating that the director who was in charge promised to make things right once it was all over. But Haku quickly stated that he devoured that man and read his memories. Those were all hopeless lies. After that, he quickly shut down that subject and put his focus entirely on the captain. When he did, the captain felt a headache. It was very clear that an obsession was motivating Haku towards him. He then unleashed his power, set on killing everyone and devouring the captain. During this battle, Haku was on the back foot, so he quickly attempted a sneak attack on both the captain and Narja. While Renoa saved the captain in time, Narja wasn't so lucky. She was snatched by Haku's monstrous body and sucked inside. This gave him a considerable power boost. The battle raged on, and while things were at a stalemate for a moment, Haku was unleashing more of his power, getting to the point where he was becoming overwhelming. Despite this, the damage on Haku was severe, but his cellular regeneration was allowing him to push forward. When things were starting to become bleak, the Primonium hidden within Chizuru's bosom came to life, and it levitated towards Yuki. Sensing the immense regret coming from it, Yuki had realized what Asuna needed to do. The Primonium then levitated to the damaged Haku and used all his power to rip apart Haku from the atoms. Haku in his current state was unable to stop this, and he could only be amused as he realized this was how his life would end. His last thoughts were on how, if he could have devoured the captain, he would have gained the power of all of chaos. Where Haku once stood was Narja, and the shattered remains of the Primonium. While Gaia and Chizuru checked on Narja, Yuki gathered as many shards of the Primonium as she could, but she couldn't help but despair over the loss of Asuna. While Sereno comforted her, the captain and the rest of the Nightmare crew had come to the conclusion that, though bittersweet, the situation had been resolved. Haku was dead, the replicas were not revealed, and the Primonium would no longer be an issue. But there was one more thing to handle: the Chaos Core. When the battle ended, the chaos began to recede. However, contamination levels spiked as the Chaos Core revealed itself, as if attempting to make a last stand. The captain, who was the only one able to provide exact coordinates of the Chaos Core, reached out and made contact. As he did, voices flashed through his mind, and he ended up reciting some words. Gula Turbo. The void devours all to sate its hunger. Superego id. Chaos advances, expands, and resurrects from the shards of chaos inside chaos. Upon hearing Renoa's voice, the captain returned to reality, then linked himself to the Chaos Core. He then used the data he received from the core and sent it to the Nightmare, allowing it to pinpoint the exact coordinates. With a precise shot from the Nightmare's cannon, the core was destroyed. This caused the Maw of the Void, as well as all of the dimensional tunnels, to disappear throughout the universe. At the end of it all, everyone was able to return to how things were. With Kaguya Pharmaceuticals losing just about everything, all they had left was a small blood sample of the captain, which wasn't enough to do anything long-term. This distressed Blanche, but Chizuru stated the captain was already fatigued, and any stressful experiments would be too dangerous. That said, she herself has not given up on him, holding the promise to destroy Kurokage together tight to her chest. Narja and Gaia were free to do as they please. Since the labs were destroyed, there was frankly no more evidence between them and Kaguya. The long sought for freedom was finally granted. Back at the Justitia, Yuki had placed the remains of the Primonium in storage, holding on a shred of hope that Asuna was still able to be revived. But instead of being gripped by despair, she began to admire Asuna as well as the captain for their unrelenting willpower to keep moving forward. Finally, there was the captain himself, who returned to the Nightmare as if nothing had happened. While he did not get any further information about the eventual crash of the SS Nightmare, it was difficult to call this mission a failure. The Nightmare continues. This is the part where I actually review the story of this event, and I have a lot of opinions. Let's start with the positives. First, there was a clear effort to take what the first 5 chapters established and resolve those plot threads. Most obviously is the deal the captain and Orlea made to see his future. This was all but forgotten about once Judas took over the plot. They very obviously patched in a flashback cutscene to address this. As messy as this is, it does a good job addressing a number of issues with this. It ties in the future crash of the SS Nightmare, and it is also used to push the story forward. They also address Judas' blood sacrifices, and pretty much simplify the process. There's nothing special about the ritual itself, the only thing necessary was the human. The whole pure heart or being a virgin or whatever was all just a scam. I enjoyed all these clarifications, and while it doesn't make the first 5 chapters any better, it does make the event itself better. The Haven arc is the best part of the first 5 chapters, but Forbidden Catalyst sweeps it. It is significantly more coherent, and the idea of what they want to do and convey is better realized. Overall, the idea is to show the sheer scale of power everyone has. Arcanaion is a powerhouse because they have the Protoss, and Protoss are basically, if I had to use a reference, the Jedi of this setting. While they lack raw combat prowess, they're effectively space wizards, and their power to manipulate the chaos itself is something literally no other race has. That's what makes them insanely invaluable, and this is why Kaguya Pharmaceuticals tries so hard to make their own better versions of Protoss. Everyone generally agrees that the chaos is a threat to all life in the universe, but even with that in mind, the factions still want power over others. In terms of supply and demand, the demand for Protoss is at an all-time high, but the supply is extremely low. So whoever has the most Protoss, or at least the most powerful versions of Protoss, would have the most power in the universe. On that same train of thought, I also liked how the story centered around Asuna, who is a Protoss separate from the captain. I'm pretty sure Asuna serves two purposes. First, to show the power of the average Protoss. This is important because every other nameless Protoss before this just kinda dies with no fanfare. And even the captain in the early chapters failed to show what was so special about Protoss other than their navigational abilities. Even Emma, the Protoss commander, is really impressive in Rinoa's trauma code, but she really doesn't show her raw power over the chaos. So having Asuna as a benchmark really helped. Second, having Asuna as a benchmark showed just how much better the captain is as a Protoss. The event hammers it in pretty hard that the captain is a step above all other Protoss. Rinoa said so, Chizuru said so, Blanche said so, and even Haku's plan hinged on absorbing the captain for his powers. Yet, it was Asuna who dealt the final decisive blow to Haku, and it was stated Asuna at the time had the power to threaten the very fabric of the universe. The reason why I'm glad this event takes the time to talk about what is basically blatant power scaling is that it's important to set up the stakes of the story. While the chaos as a whole threatens the universe, the beginning chapters kind of feel like it was always just in the background while we dealt with political drama and things like that. Now that we fully understand how severely threatening the chaos is, to the point where planet busting is a casual thing, it actually gives Juice's plan more credit, by trading one life to save many. Overall, this enhances the world building to a considerable degree, and I really appreciate that. To move on, I also really like Yuki and Chizuru in this event. Yuki actually feels like a well-rounded character. She very clearly has a major hard-on for Asuna. You can super easily Yuri ship them, and I'm glad the writers were not afraid to give Yuki a relationship that wasn't with the captain. Despite that, she was still highly flirtatious. But it felt more like a power move, like she just really wanted to commit NTR on Rinoa for the hell of it, rather than just her being outright infatuated with the captain. Chizuru, while I don't think she comes out of this looking as well-rounded as Yuki, is also a fairly good character. While they don't spend much time on it, her story regarding Kurokage gives a clear motivation to her actions as an antagonist, and it also justifies why she is so willing to betray her contract with Kaguya Pharmaceuticals when she notices a way to get rid of it. As for Serenial, yeah, we'll have to talk about her in the negative section. Speaking of the negatives, unfortunately they outweigh the positives by a good amount. Right off the bat, the captain glazing is kind of out of control. I get it, this is one of the biggest complaints they had to address, but I think they overcorrected. If you ignore the issues with the Korean script, the worst thing about the captain was how it felt like he had very little agency. Ironically, this problem still exists, because he's stupid. In my previous video, I talked about the cutscene where Owen gets possessed, and the captain makes up a baffling stupid plan. So bad that the writing was ironically aware enough to call out how this was a bad idea. Yet the captain went for it anyway, and it went about as well as one would expect. I've gotten some pushback on this. Some critics stated I didn't understand how Orleya saved the captain. I could argue against this, but I am more than fine admitting that I didn't understand how early assignments worked at the time. Because the fact is, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. The scene is still nonsense because the captain was straight up going to get himself killed. It was not in his plan to get saved at all. He fully expected himself to contest against an agent when literally everyone else was telling him that is dumb and it wouldn't work. And the fact is, it's the captain that allowed Ray and Owen on one of the most dangerous missions they ever had, when he wouldn't even let them on a much lighter mission beforehand. I could rant all day about how awful this scenario is. This is still the worst cutscene in the game by a great margin. But this event solidified that the captain actually and truthfully is a terrible strategist. He's so consistently bad that it makes the worst cutscene in the game make sense. It is objectively part of his character. He actively puts his allies in danger and goes against the worst odds possible. For example, before I seriously studied this event, I was actually really confused as to how easily Chizuru and Itsuku stole the Primonium for a second time. That's because I naively thought the Primonium was left secured in the information center. But no, not only did the captain take it with him, he took it with them while they went drinking. Why would you take an item that can threaten the universe to a bar? It'd be one thing if Yuki wanted to keep it close, at least that'd be in character. But not only does she not want that, she's the one who points out someone could steal it again. And they did! And then there's a cutscene with Cassius. I kinda wanted to let this slide, but I'm on a roll right now, so I just can't. Cassius asks the captain to participate in a game of chance. And if he loses, the captain will become Cassius' slave. There's no exaggeration. Rinoa even says Cassius just admitted to human trafficking. But the captain is so damn sure that they'll win that he accepts with no concern. Of course, the only way they could win is through cheating, which is the point of the game actually. But it wasn't even the captain who cheated, it was Yuki. He just put his entire life in Yuki's hands. And this is just a very concerning trend that they started. Him working with Chizuru is justified, I don't have an issue with that. But it gets so out of hand that he ends up giving his own blood. And then agreeing to being Blanche's experiment even after he learned what she was actually doing. And I need to remind you, everyone was so disgusted by the truth that they had to leave, and Yuki straight up wanted to murder. And the captain's like, "Bro, I promised I'll do it." This is why you don't go all in without knowing the stakes. The worst part is, the plot armor is so massive that things just kind of work out. Every problem the captain created gets resolved. Asuna was stolen, but she was the thing that killed Haku anyway. All the labs were destroyed, so they couldn't experiment on the captain. Chizuru has such a hard-on for the captain that she actually lets him off the hook. Speaking of getting off the hook, are we really letting Kage Pharmaceuticals go? Are we not going to arrest them? You know, this company that almost destroyed the universe? I don't think we can just cap that off as, all's well that ends well. The captain has to do routine uploads. The Empire is going to know. Why are we acting like this is all a happy ending and credits are rolling? Why did the captain just leave? Where is the captain from the Epilogue? Is he locked in the rewrites? Do we have to deal with this idiot, smooth-brained captain until then? Are we sure this is the same writing team that made Rinoa's Trauma Code? Because her character took a nosedive in this event. What was originally a stern character who was actually very caring and highly concerned about the captain's overworking himself is now just a character who is suffering from main girl syndrome. She just stands there and gets jealous whenever a new girl shows up and shows interest in her man. She also doesn't even give any more pushback to the captain either. Every stupid decision he makes has her just going along with it. All she does is just pull him out of any situation he gets himself in. You know what? She's literally Rappy, cuck chair and all, because she lost her Serenial, by the way. Get to her in just a moment. I highlighted Rinoa so far, but her issues are also issues with the rest of the cast. The captain's sheer existence kind of makes all the characters buckle at the knees. As explained, Yuki is justified, but the captain being the only one who can see Kurokage feels very arbitrary. I'm sure the explanation will be very cool and will probably make sense whenever they get to it. But my point is, it doesn't feel necessary to do that. It just feels like convenient writing. Lazy writing. Instead of the captain taking an active approach and persuading Chizuru to his side, he just happens to be the only one in the entire universe who sees Chizuru's literal demon. The story also doubles down on the captain's combat capabilities being nowhere near the level of an agent, which is both a good and a bad thing. It's good because it remains consistent with the beginning of the game, but is bad because the captain might as well just be a Chaos Emerald. Capture him and you'll get the ultimate power. He gets easily snatched away twice in this event, and he is still rescued constantly by Renoa. Now, this would actually be an interesting dynamic by itself, but this doesn't come off as intentional. Even if we assume my theory is correct and the captain actually did forget he has time manipulation abilities, everyone, and I mean everyone, treats the captain like he can cure cancer at the flick of his wrist. But it doesn't feel justified. The captain is not a good self-insert, let alone being a good character. There is a severe disconnect between the player and the avatar that we are controlling. Everyone says he is awesome. Everyone says he can do amazing things. Everyone says he is special. But we as the player do not see that. I have seen this writing mistake so many times. The writers force all the supporting cast to just like the main character. Why? Because he's the main character. Smilegate is a prime example of this. This girl can destroy planets, and she is well loved in Teresian because she is known as a guardian angel who protects everyone. When she shows up, she immediately shows why her title exists. She sweeps all of the monsters in the area with ease. Yet she is the one who is starstruck by the captain because his ship can destroy chaos cores, I guess? And she takes it a step further by just straight up falling in love with them. Some might think I'm stretching it here, but her memoirs, which acts as supplemental character info, shows that she credits conquering her past entirely to the captain. And to be fair, he deserves some credit for that. Smilegate has an irrational fear of being a monster because she was injected by organic substances from chaos monsters in order to save her from an infection from the chaos. It's a source of her immense strength, but as a result, she has constant nightmares of being eaten alive by monsters, and her mind has to resist falling into the void. It's something she deals with every day. The captain did learn about this while navigating through the lab, and he did tell her he will always be there for her. And that moment is what made Smilegate become deeply infatuated. So yeah, credit where credit is due. But can I be real for a moment? Does it really justify Smilegate delivering herself as a Christmas present? There's two factors going on here. First is that Smilegate has given the captain way too much credit before she even met him. Second is that her deepest insecurities are known to the captain, so this comes off as immature on her part. But that'd be giving the writers too much credit. I really feel this is just more overcorrection. There's just no build-up to this relationship. I don't even think Smilegate spent 24 hours with the captain before she decided he's the one to spread her legs open for. But let's put the captain aside. Smilegate has a bigger problem. In general, she feels forced into the story. With us being at the very tail end of the plots, the writing team had to rush her backstory in, establish a relationship with the captain, and market her to get people to pull for her on the gacha. Now, this plan in of itself isn't doomed from the start. You can make it work. But there's clearly a character that should have been the focus on the third part of this event, Narja. Not only is she highly connected to the final boss of this event, but she's the next banner unit anyway. It makes me think this was the original plan, but they changed it at the last minute because Smilegate makes a better Christmas present, I guess. If they had switched spots and delayed Smilegate's debut until after the event, Narja's turmoil about killing Haku along with being a monster could have a lot more room to breathe. Maybe she could have been the one to be infatuated with the captain instead. It would have made a lot more sense considering the situation. Moving on, and this is the last thing I'll complain about. But Parthena connecting Leia's prophecy to Asuna feels like a major stretch. Even when Rinoa asked how those two things connect, Parthena didn't really answer that question. In fact, I completely forgot the reason why the captain and Rinoa agreed to go to Resian was to figure out that prophecy, because it's never brought up again after Leia is written out of the story. I don't really want to harp on this too much, so I'll leave it at that. All in all, the event story was decent. There's a lot of world building in this event, and the power scaling is very nice. So while the writing quality is better, the issue now is the story is trying to be too many things at once. It wants to be a real and brutal dystopian story, yet at the same time it wants to be a harem story, and also at the same time it wants to be a space opera. In one of my previous videos, I stated that the dev team promised to make the story respect the brutality and darkness that setting would demand. This is still one of their goals, and they never retracted that. But they haven't stuck the landing on this yet. I imagine this will continue to be a problem until the rewrite comes out in April, and if that's the case, damn, that's such a long time. Still, I need to stress that the story, writing, and plot did get better. So my hope that the story will reach that high quality is still strong. Anyway, I got it for a really long time. If you made it this far, I really thank you for that, because honestly, I'm not too sure how many story enjoyers are actually playing Chaos Your Nightmare right now. So if you're a real one and you watch all the way to the end, I genuinely thank you for enjoying the content. And I also want to know how you feel about this event, and as well as my theories regarding all of this. So be sure to leave a comment and definitely like and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching, and take care.